Welcome to Teaching 4 Generations. This is Gemmy Allen. I teach management at Northlake College in Irving, Texas, and I'm co-author of the textbook Management, Meeting and Exceeding Customer Expectations, published by Cengage. College students today are more intergenerational than ever. In this presentation, I'll introduce you to some ideas to help you cross generational lines and meet the educational needs and expectations of your students 18 to 80. For the first time in history, 4 generations are attending college. Higher education today is more intergenerational than ever. Generations, like people, have personalities. They are shaped by common experiences, defining moments, history, demographics, economics, and culture. The generations depicted here are those from the American Management Association's article, Leading the 4 Generations at Work. Note that the baby boom generation is the only one officially defined by the Census Bureau. The other categories, silents, Generation Xers, Generation Ys or Millennials, are widely accepted by generational researchers. There are discrepancies in names and years born. Some of you want to know how to teach students age 18 to over 80. We've all been there. In class, the silents are sitting ready for class. The boomers are sharing what they did over the weekend. The Xers are anxious to get it over with as soon as possible. The millennials are texting their friends and surfing the internet. There's a generational shift where there is aging on one end of the spectrum and on the other end a growing youth level. The gap between generations is mostly about the different ways that old and young use technology. You may find young students harder to teach. Older students and faculty are asking, what's happened to the work ethic? Some say young students lack the desire to contribute more than the minimum, show up on time, if at all, and take the initiative to think through assignments. Hey, when I started, it was keep your head down, your mouth shut, and pay your dues. Oh, this generation is soft. They always got a trophy just for showing up. They don't think they need to have a lot of experience because they can answer any question at the touch of a button. Younger students are thinking, old people have a lot of rules and procedures for which there are no good reasons. Just because I show up and study hard doesn't mean that I achieve my personal goals. I don't want to waste any time. Why watch a 30-minute video for something easily found online in less than a minute? I want someone to tell me that I am going in the right direction. You'd like to help young students learn. Review 3 steps to meet the educational needs of students. First, examine the 4 generations. For people of any age, crossing generational lines requires self-awareness and an understanding of others. First, an apology. There will be those in each group who will disagree with what you're about to hear. They will complain that I'm overgeneralizing, jumping to conclusions, or have a personal bias against a group. None of this is true. Anytime we're trying to generalize, there's always going to be a challenge. Silents born between 1925 and 1946 are 66 to 87 years old. The silent generation describes children of the Great Depression and World War II. Sometimes they are called veterans or matures. The silent label refers to their conformist and civic instincts. It also makes a nice contrast with the noisy ways of the anti-establishment boomers. Their world is marked by faith, patriotism, and justice. They do not challenge the status quo. They value teamwork, recognizing that the group is more powerful and important than the individual. Silents expect that if work was carried out as part of a team, the team will be recognized rather than the individual. Silents want recognition for outstanding achievement rather than doing the job expected. They value a handshake and a thank you from someone in authority. Silence listened to tenured higher-ups who spell out clearly what is expected. Shortened text messaging terms such as LOL may be viewed as rude and indecipherable. Silence do not challenge the status quo. Their defining idea is duty. Markers were the Great Depression, electrification, and World War II. Their style is team player. They think work is an inevitable obligation. They think education is a dream. Rewards because you earn it, and the technology of their time were slide rules and rotary phones. Baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964 are 48 to 65 years old. The baby boomer label is drawn from the great spike in fertility that began in 1946, right after the end of World War II, and ended almost as abruptly in 1964, around the time the birth control pill went on the market. It's a classic example of a demography-driven name. This is the only generation actually defined by the Census Bureau. As children, they were the first generation to grow up watching television. They listened to rock and roll on transistor radios in their teenage years. They became young adults during the Vietnam War when they came together in protest, a very definitive time for baby boomers. Then the civil rights and women's movements came about during the 60s and 70s, a time of political turbulence. Major events remembered by this generation are the first man on the moon, the assassinations of John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and President Nixon's resignation, and the Cold War. When the baby boomers launched their own careers, they didn't ask their parents for guidance. Why trust anyone over 30? Overall, this generation is considered to be free-spirited, skeptical of the government, and materialistic. Baby boomers are considered to have a traditional work ethic, so they are willing to work long and extra hours. But they are the new generation that never stops working. Many are unable to afford retirement, and baby boomers stay on the job. Generation Xers and Millennials covet their jobs. Boomers need recognition that celebrates the individual and the team. Awards can be publicly displayed, such as trophies, plaques, and lapel pins are valued. Baby boomers are free-spirited individuals. The defining idea is individuality. Markers were the civil rights, women's movement, space, assassinations, Vietnam, and impeachment. Their style is self-absorbed. For them, work is an exciting adventure, and education is a birthright. Reward because you deserve it. Technology that was television, transistor radios, calculators, and touch-tone phones. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980, are 32 to 47 years old. Generation X overtook the first name affixed to this generation, the baby bust. Xers are often depicted as savvy, entrepreneurial loners. Generation Xers, those cynical latchkey kids, assumed they had no choice but to make their own way. The baby boomers are worried and angered by Generation Xers' lack of commitment to work hard and their apparent slacker attitude. Generation Xers, however, have no problem declining the extra work hours. In fact, they see the situation much differently. In general, they believe that if management focused on meeting the needs of employees and customers, management would be more concerned about adequate staffing and finding a resolution. Generation Xers do not feel compelled to stay with one employer, and they search for more profitable jobs and careers. Generation Xers view themselves as autonomous, but the baby boomers see this as arrogance. Generation Xers do not seem to have any negative views of the baby boomers. Generation X managers question whether baby boomers have the high-tech skills or stamina to do what needs to be done on the job. Generation X wants to be allowed to do work with minimal interference or interruptions. They want recognition of achievements inside and outside of work. Xers react positively to being able to choose from a list of recognition options. They need talk from those in authority to always be supported by action. Xers respond to individualized communication rather than mass communiques. Email is the first choice, then followed by face-to-face interaction. Generation Xers are entrepreneurial. The defining idea is diversity. The markers were latchkey kids, the Berlin Wall, downsizing, and homelessness. Their style is entrepreneur. For them, work is a difficult challenge, and education is a way to get there. Rewards because you need it, and technology, video games, spreadsheets, and cell phones. Millennials born between 1981 and 1994 are 18 to 31 years old. But we're going to focus on the ones that are 18 to 29 because that's what the Pew Research does that we're going to talk about later. The Millennial Generation is the first generation to come of age in the new millennium. Generation Y are millennials, are teens and 20-somethings who are making the passage into adulthood at the start of a new millennium. They have been called the look at me generation. They are the children of overprotective helicopter parents. The millennials are unusually close to their parents. They freely ask their folks for assistance, and their parents are eager to lend a hand. Millennials are racially and ethnically diverse and technologically savvy. They are less observant in terms of religion, but more trusting in terms of institutions and authority than previous generations. Millennials value life outside of work. They need frequent feedback at various milestones toward achieving a goal. Millennials respond to positive feedback, and any criticism should be given with several compliments. Having experienced more organized play and sports growing up, millennials find more comfort in structure and timelines than the freewheeling Generation Xers. So frequent and ongoing communication is going to be even more important. Just make it fast. They hate to waste time too. Millennials don't use cell phones to talk, they text. As such, mobile communications that can be accessed quickly and easily while on the go, think Twitter and Tumblr, make the most sense for this crowd. Millennials are confident and connected. The defining idea is that they are open to change. Markers are the environment, violence, Columbine, terrorism, internet, and medicated. Their style is entitled. Their work is a way to meet their personal goals, and education is not an option. They get a reward because they participated, and technology is computers and mobile phones. Next, analyze younger students by answering, how millennial are you? This is from Pew Research Center, and the gap between generations is mostly about the different ways that old and young use technology. It is a gentler generation gap than the baby boomers, whose mantra used to be, don't trust anyone over 30. Millennials have already distinguished themselves as a generation that gets along well with others, especially their elders. Our focus is on the 50 million millennials, age 18 to 29, profiled in the Pew Research Center report. In the past 24 hours, did you watch more than an hour of television programming or not? Baby boomers grew up watching television. In the past 24 hours, did you read a daily newspaper or not? Newspaper readership has been diminishing except for older adults. In the past 24 hours, did you play video games or not? Younger students play more video games. Thinking about your telephone use, do you have only a landline in your home, only a cell phone, or a landline and a cell phone? And as you can see, the younger the person, the more they only have a cell phone. In the past 24 hours, about how many text messages, if any, did you send and receive on your cell phone? None, 1 to 9, 10 to 49, or 50 or more. And as you can see on this slide, silence, almost none, boomers, very few, and 50 or more, of course, millennials. How important is being successful in a high-paying career or profession to you personally? One of the most important, very important but not the most, somewhat important, or not important. Millennials' entry into careers and first jobs has been badly set back by the recession, but they are more upbeat than their elders about their own economic futures as well as about the overall state of the nation. About 9 in 10 either say that they currently have enough money or that they will eventually meet their long-term financial goals. But at the moment, fully 37% of 18 to 29-year-olds are unemployed or out of the workforce, the highest share among this age group in more than 3 decades. They are on track to become the most educated generation in American history. They are also the most engaged in college, community college, or graduate schools. The highest share in modern history of 18 to 24-year-olds in this case are now enrolled in college. It's a tick under 40%. A modern knowledge-based economy sends a message to everybody. You want to get ahead, you better get some credentials. But that trend has been clearly accelerated by the recession. Can't find a job anyway, might as well go get a degree or another degree. Do you think more people of different races marrying each other is a good thing for society, bad thing for society, or does it make much difference? Millennials are the most diverse generation racially and ethnically in our history, and they are the most open to change of any generation. In the past 12 months, have you contacted a government official or not? Millennials cast a wary eye on human nature. 2/3 say you can't be too careful when dealing with people. Yet they are less skeptical than their elders of government. More so than other generations, they believe government should do more to solve problems. Have you ever created your own profile on any social networking site such as MySpace, Facebook, or LinkedIn, or haven't you done this? Millennials embrace multiple modes of self-expression. 3/4 have created a profile on a social networking site. 1 in 5 have posted a video of themselves online. Clearly, they are the leading adopters of new technology. So it's their window on the world. It's their window for information, for entertainment. It's the platform for their social lives. Teenagers and 20-somethings need to be where other teenagers and 20-somethings are. And way back in the distant mist of history before the digital revolution, that place was the suburban mall or the soda shop. Now that place is Facebook. They need to be there because everybody else is there. You see it here in terms of social networking profiles where fully 3/4 have one. Everybody really has the ability to share their lives with everybody they want to share it with. It has been dubbed the look at me generation, and they take it for granted that everybody wants to look at them, and they have the power to be looked at. How important is living a very religious life to you personally? One of the most important, very important but not the most, somewhat important, not important. Millennials are less religious. They are the least overtly religious American generation in modern times. 1 in 4 are unaffiliated with any religion, far more than the share of older adults when they were ages 18 to 29. Yet, not belonging does not necessarily mean not believing. Millennials pray about as often as their elders did in their own youth. Were your parents married during most of the time you were growing up or not? Only about 6 in 10 were raised by both parents. a smaller share than was the case with older generations. In weighing their own life priorities, millennials, like older adults, place parenthood and marriage far above career and financial success. But they aren't rushing to the altar. Just 1 in 5 millennials, 21%, are married now, half the share of their parents' generation at the same stage of life. About a third, 34%, are parents, according to the Pew Research Survey. Pew estimates that in 2006, more than a third of 18 to 29-year-old women who gave birth were unmarried. This is a far higher share than was the case in earlier generations. Do you have a tattoo or not? Nearly 4 in 10 have a tattoo, and for most who do, 1 is not enough. About half of those with tattoos have 2 to 5, and 18% have 6 or more. And 70% say their tattoos are hidden beneath clothing. Do you have a piercing in a place other than your earlobe or not? A generational badge seems to be tattoos and piercings, perhaps in the way that long hair was for those of us who grew up in the 60s. Nearly 1 in 4 have a piercing in some place other than their earlobe, about 6 times the share of older adults who've done this. In general, would you describe your political views as conservative, moderate, or liberal? To be sure, millennials remain the most likely of any generation to self-identify as liberals. They are less supportive than their elders of an assertive national security policy and more supportive of a progressive domestic social agenda. Finally, plan assignments to meet the educational needs of students. Young students are different. Millennials are technologically savvy in a media-rich world. They are busy, fast-moving, multitaskers. But they are increasingly demanding and cynical audience members. They are impatient with instructional learning typically found in classrooms, e-learning, and mobile learning. Young students need direction. Critical thinking without the aid of menu-driven devices does not appear to be a strong suit for many of these people. Give them the opportunity to dance their fingers on a keyboard and they will do it better than anyone over 40. But when it comes to so-called common sense decisions, be more specific in your direction. Rather than simply saying, read the case, list for them exactly what steps they should complete. If you ask them to type a business letter, provide the specific format that should be followed. If you are delegating a project, use this 4-step process. 1. Be crystal clear in describing the assignment. 2. Help students brainstorm an approach. 3. Set specific milestones to be completed. 4. Refuse to allow them to redelegate it back on your shoulders by professing inability. Young students need structure. Teach what hard work looks like. Be sure to model these behaviors for them. Break an assignment into smaller tasks. Let them see if you're on the job, you're always looking for the next task to be done. Assign more than one project at a time and let students bounce back and forth between assignments. They're used to multitasking rather than working sequentially. All of this requires a bit of trial and error, but the result will be engaged, productive young students. Make content stimulating. Young students multitask 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There is no way you and your class can compete with the rest of their lives, so don't even try. Get past your idea of how assignments should be completed and allow students some freedom to work the way they are used to. Rethink the parameters that you have in your head about the right and wrong ways to complete assignments. With the introduction of YouTube and a number of similar sites, young students are expecting a bit of humor, fascination, or wonder with every message. One community college, for instance, has developed a cartoon character that walks students through the registration process. Another organization has a site filled with individuals that narrate the visitor's path through the offerings available. Mouse over an icon and up pops a person to provide a whimsical explanation of the class. The keys are engagement and instant gratification. Remember, students are texting their friends, surfing the web, participating in a conversation, listening to their favorite music, and oh, by the way, searching your site for what they need. Too much of teaching is still mired in classrooms and taught by talking heads. Make the training interactive, entertaining, and stimulating. Encourages students to embrace the content. So engage through technology to reinforce learning by using such elements as downloadable documents, checklists, directories, biographies, and discussion forums. We must strive to create a continuous learning environment comprised of formal and informal components. All approaches to learning are complementary and interconnected. Individuals are learning all the time. In this slide, you'll notice that if you just give them a lecture at your teaching event and they leave, then they are more likely to forget the material. They will just be an office. We would like our students to be experts. So we want to include as many of these other aspects as we can in this model. So we'll have learning aids such as our study guides, on-demand learning, and also we want to use social learning. And this would be what is considered here in this communities of practice. And that's like an online discussion forum where learners interact and share ideas on a specific topic. The learners deepen their knowledge about a particular subject area and strengthen their relationships with other members of the group. An example would be a blog that's useful for sharing knowledge and information, and it's usually authored by a single person, such as the faculty member. A wiki is a tool that can be used to share knowledge or information, and it relies on a group involvement to create the content and create and edit content for a project, so a group of students might use this. Social networking application allows a user to build connections with a network of other users. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube would be an example, and these would support basic communications among users as well as the sharing of ideas, interests, ratings, and other information. So the more of these that are included, then the more likely that the student will reach the expert level in your topic.